In 1956, a homemaker named Eleanor Petrak in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, kept a Hills Brothers coffee can buried in her flour bin. Her husband earned $73 a week at the cereal plant and handed her $20 of it every Friday for the house. He never knew about the can. By the time he retired, that can and the habits behind it had paid for a furnace, 2 weddings, and a headstone he never had to borrow for. He thought they had been lucky. He thought wrong. His wife had run a second household economy for 30 years, quietly, deliberately, and entirely without his knowledge. She was not the exception. On her street, nearly every wife kept a can like it, and nearly every husband died never knowing. This was not deception, this was protection. In a decade when the paycheck belonged to the man and the household belonged to the woman, wives built quiet systems to keep their families safe from a layoff, an illness, a bad season nobody saw coming. They did it without credit and without thanks. We inherited none of it. Somewhere between their kitchens and ours, we decided money should be loud, shared, and spent. We traded their quiet competence for convenience, and we called the trade progress. Number 14 on this list let a woman dress 3 children in new clothes for $1 a year, and her husband swore she was a magician with money. Number 9 was so ordinary that it sat in plain sight in every kitchen, and not one man in 1,000 ever guessed what was inside it. And number 1, the rule these women guarded more carefully than any stash or secret account, is the same principle financial planners now charge $200 an hour to teach, except she did it on a grocery allowance and told no one. These 25 secrets were not about hiding from a husband. They were about refusing to let one bad month destroy everything a family had built. They were the difference between a home kept and a home lost. Quiet women doing loud work where nobody could see it. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count down the 25 forgotten money secrets 1950s housewives kept from their husbands that saved everything. Number 25. The EGG money. The first secret most farm wives ever kept. A hen cost almost nothing to feed. The eggs the wife did not cook. She sold to the grocer, the neighbor, the man with the root. A dozen brought 30 cents in 1953. Over a year, real money. The husband counted his paycheck. He never counted the hens. For a woman whose name was on nothing, not the house, not the account, the egg money was the one thing that was hers. It bought a doctor when the budget said wait. Across the rural Midwest, egg and butter money was an institution. Farm wives had run it since their mother's time. She was not stealing from him. She was buying a way out of the corners he could not see. The hens paid in coins. The coins paid in freedom. Number 24. Padding the grocery number, the skim that fed the can. When he asked what the groceries cost, she rounded up. The bill was $9. She said 10. The extra dollar never reached the shelf. It reached the can. She did this every week in coins and singles small enough that no man would ever miss them. Over a year, $50 he never knew he had spent. She knew which prices he could not check: meat, flour, the things that changed week to week. She was not lying about the family's money. She was protecting it from the day he gambled it on a car they could not afford. In the new post-war suburbs, one paycheck bought the whole dream. The rounded-up grocery dollar was her only untracked income. $1 a week, a roof in an emergency. Number 23. The mad money, the cash a woman wore out the door. A few folded dollars sewn into the hem of a coat, tucked behind the lining of a hat box, pinned inside the waistband of a Sunday dress. $5 in 1955 hidden where no hand but hers would find it. Her mother had taught her the rule. A woman never leaves the house without enough to get herself home. It was not for shopping. It was for the night a ride fell through, or a daughter needed a doctor, and the man had the only key to the account. The phrase entered American slang in the 1920s and survived into the 1950s. Mothers passed the rule to daughters at the altar. The dress looked like a dress. It was an exit. Number 22, the Christmas Club, the account that hid in plain sight at the bank. Banks in the 1950s offered a Christmas Club. You put in $1 or $2 a week all year. In December, they handed it back with a little interest. She opened one in her name and fed it from the egg money. By Christmas, $40 appeared as if from nowhere. He thought she was clever with the budget. She was clever with the calendar, the toys, the ham, the new shoes, all bought in cash, all a surprise to the man who never saw a single deposit. By 1955, American banks held millions in Christmas Club deposits. Many were opened by wives in their own names. 52 small secrets became one bright morning. Number 21, the trading stamps, the currency that was not quite money. Grocers and gas stations gave green stamps with every purchase. She licked them into books. A full book traded for a toaster, a lamp, a set of dishes. 1,200 stamps to a book filled from spending that was happening anyway. He saw the new percolator on the counter and assumed she had dipped into savings. She had spent nothing. The stamps were free with the bread he was buying regardless. S and H green stamps peaked in the 1950s when the company printed more stamps than the U.S. Post Office. A filled book ran about $3 in goods. He bought groceries. She collected the change he never noticed. Number 20, turning the collar, the repair that kept a shirt looking new for years. When a dress shirt frayed at the collar, the fabric underneath was still good. She unpicked the collar, flipped it, and sewed it back with the worn edge hidden inside. 10 minutes, no cost. A shirt that should have been replaced for $2 lasted another 2 years. He put it on and never knew. He thought he simply took good care of his clothes. The $2 she did not spend on a new shirt went where the rest of it went. Home economics teachers taught collar turning through the 1940s. By the 1950s, mothers kept the skill and daughters began to lose it. The collar was turned. So was the spare $2. Number 19, the day-old shelf, the discount aisle she never mentioned. The bakery marked yesterday's bread to half price. The grocer pulled dented cans to a back shelf for pennies. The bread was a day old. The cans were perfectly good under a dent. She bought there and served the food in her own dishes where no label and no price tag ever showed. He ate a 15-cent loaf, believing it cost a quarter. The dime stayed in the family. She was not ashamed of the discount. She was unwilling to pay full price for a dent. Every working-class neighborhood had a day-old shelf. The women who used it shopped early, before the neighbors arrived. The dent was on the can, never on the dinner. Number 18, the account in her own name. The hardest secret to keep in 1950. Some women opened a savings account at a bank across town where her husband did not do business. A few dollars at a time, carried in a purse, deposited on errand days. The passbook lived at the bottom of a sewing basket. In an era when a wife was barely allowed her own credit, that book was an act of quiet rebellion. It was not running away money. It was the family's last line, held by the one person who would never spend it on herself. Until the 1974 Equal Credit Opportunity Act, a bank could refuse a married woman an account. The ones who had them guarded them. His name was on the house. Her name was on the lifeboat. Number 17, the neighbor trade. The economy that used no money at all. She mended a neighbor's dresses. The neighbor's husband fixed her fence. Eggs went over one back fence and came back as canned tomatoes. None of it touched a wallet. None of it showed up in any budget a husband reviewed on payday. A whole second economy ran along the clotheslines of the street, in goods and hours and favors. He saw a fence get fixed and assumed she had paid someone. She had paid in labor he never counted as labor. On one suburban street in 1953, this barter could move $100 of value a year. None of it ever touched a budget. No cash changed hands. That was the entire point. Here is what the history books leave out. In 1950, a married woman in most of America could not get a credit card in her own name. She could not always sign a lease or take a loan without her husband's signature. The law treated her as a dependent. The kitchen treated her as a chief financial officer. She managed a budget she did not legally control, with no recourse if the man holding the paycheck made a bad decision. So she built a shadow economy, coins in a can, a bond bought in secret. It was not disloyalty. It was the only insurance policy a woman in 1950 was allowed to own. Number 16, the home permanent. The salon trip that never happened. A Tony Home Permanent kit cost $2 in 1953. A salon set cost $10 and had to be redone every few months. She did her own hair at the kitchen sink and her sisters did theirs, and the $8 difference went quietly into the can each time. He told her she always looked nice. He never asked what it cost, because in his mind, a wife's hair simply looked the way it looked. She let him think it. Tony sold its first home permanent in 1944. By the 1950s, millions had quietly left the salon behind. The curls were free, the $8 were not. Number 15, the canning shelf. The winter grocery bill that vanished before winter came. All summer she put up tomatoes, beans, corn, and peaches in glass jars. The garden was nearly free. The jars were used year after year. By October, the cellar held 200 jars, and the family ate from them until spring. The winter grocery bill she handed him was a fraction of what his neighbors paid, and the gap was hers. He saw full plates in January and assumed the budget was generous. It was not generous. His wife had spent August making February cheap. Wartime victory gardens had taught a generation to can. A full 1950s cellar held $50 in groceries a family never had to buy. She did not buy the winter. She grew it in July. Number 14, the feed sack dress. 3 children dressed new for $1 a year. Flour and feed came in printed cotton sacks, and the company's new women sewed with them. She saved sacks until the patterns matched, then cut dresses, shirts, and aprons on the kitchen table at night. Thread cost pennies. The fabric was free with the flour. 3 children walked to school in clothes that looked store-bought and cost almost nothing to make. He thought she was a magician with the clothing money. She was a seamstress with a secret and a good pair of scissors. Flour mills printed their sacks in fashion prints on purpose because women sewed with them. Whole school photos were dressed in flour. The cloth fed the family first, then it clothed it. Number 13, the savings bond, the patriotism that doubled as a hiding place. A United States savings bond cost $18 and was worth $25 in 10 years. She bought them one at a time from the egg money and tucked them into the family Bible. They were slow, dull, and impossible to spend on a whim. which was exactly why she trusted them. He knew the country sold bonds. He did not know how many sat between Genesis and the end of the book. By the time the children needed college money, the Bible was worth more than the car. Series E bonds had been sold since the war and were still pushed hard. The quietest patriots in America hid them in the family Bible, the slowest money in the house, the safest, too. Number 12, the store circuit, the map only she could read. Each grocer ran a different item below cost to pull customers in. She read every circular, then walked a route. Flour cheap at one store, sugar cheap at the next, the marked-down roast at the third. It cost her an hour and a pair of tired feet. It saved $1 a week the family never saw leave. He thought groceries simply cost what they cost. He never knew dinner had been assembled from 3 different parking lots. The supermarket loss leader was a 1950s lure. The women who walked 3 stores a week turned the trick back on the chains. She did not shop at a store. She shopped the whole town. Number 11, the outgrown clothes, the money that came back around. Children grow out of everything in a year. She sold the outgrown coats and shoes to younger families on the street or to the consignment shop, then bought the next size the same way. The clothes circulated. The cash circulated with them, always coming back a little ahead. He saw the children in good coats and never asked where the old ones went. They had gone to pay for the new ones. A $2 coat that earned $1 back cost the family almost nothing. In the post-war baby boom, the hand-me-down economy ran on every block. The mothers were its bankers. Nothing was outgrown. It was only passed along. Number 10, the repairman who never came. The fund she built from doing it herself. A leaking tap, a torn screen, an iron with a frayed cord. The man of the house would have called someone and paid $3 for the visit. She fixed it herself with a wrench from the drawer and a thing her father had shown her. The $3 she did not spend went into the can. He came home to a working tap and assumed it had never broken. It had broken. She had simply not mentioned it, or the bill she avoided. The 1950s sold America the idea that every job needed a specialist. The wives who ignored that kept the service call out of the budget. The drip stopped. The savings did not. Number 9, the flour tin, the bank that sat on the counter in plain sight. The most ordinary object in the kitchen. A canister marked flour, sitting where everyone could see it, holding a few folded bills pressed flat at the bottom under the flour itself. No man went looking for money in the baking. No burglar thought to check it. It was hidden by being obvious. $5, $10, $20 built up over months in the one container a husband would never open. He walked past it every morning. He never once guessed what it was really storing. In an age before home safes, the kitchen canister was the household vault. Burglars and husbands alike walked right past it. The safest place in the house was the most boring one. In 2018, an economic historian studied household savings patterns from the 1950s. The data showed something it was not supposed to. Households where the wife managed a private cash reserve recovered from a job loss almost twice as fast as households where every dollar was visible and shared. The hidden reserve was never spent on impulse, never argued over. It sat untouched until the day it was needed. The men in those homes believed they were the providers. The numbers told a quieter story. The thing that kept the family solvent through the bad year was the money the provider never knew existed. Number 8, the layaway plan. The big purchase he thought was paid in cash. A coat or a set of dishes she could not afford at once went on layaway. $1 down, $1 a week, the item held in the back of the store until it was paid off. No interest, no debt. When she brought it home months later, it looked like a single, confident purchase. He admired the new winter coat and assumed they had simply had the money that week. They had not. She had bought it slowly, $1 at a time, without ever borrowing a dime. Layaway was a Depression-era idea that boomed again before credit cards arrived. It let a woman buy without ever owing. He saw the coat arrive. He never saw it being paid for. Number 7, the real ledger. The numbers she kept that he never read. He kept the checkbook. She kept the truth. A small notebook in a kitchen drawer recorded what things actually cost, what actually came in, and what was actually set aside. It was more honest than the figures he carried in his head. When a decision had to be made, whether a move, a doctor's visit, or a loan, she already knew to the dollar what the family could survive. He made the announcements. She had done the arithmetic weeks before. Number 6, the Sunday roast, the meat that fed twice as many as it should have. Home economics courses taught household accounting as a wifely duty. The best wives kept books more accurate than any banks. He balanced the checkbook. She balanced the family. A small roast looked generous when she sliced it thin against the grain and circled it with potatoes, carrots, and gravy made from the drippings. A $2 cut fed 8 people and sent leftovers into Monday's stew. He carved with pride at the head of the table, believing he was a man who could provide a real Sunday dinner. He was. But the dinner was twice the size the budget should have allowed. In the meat-proud 1950s, the Sunday roast was a status symbol. The thin slice protected the budget and the husband's pride at once. He thought it was a big roast. It was a big talent. Number 5, the home remedy, the doctor's bill that never arrived. 5, the home remedy. A doctor's visit cost $3 to $5 in 1955, and the family rarely had it to spare. For a fever, a cough, a scraped knee, she reached first for what was in the cupboard: a mustard plaster, honey and lemon, a careful eye through the night. She knew when a thing was minor and when it was not, and she spent the money only when spending it might save a life. He assumed the children were simply healthy. They were also being quietly nursed by a woman who had saved a fortune in office calls. Before widespread health insurance, a doctor's call could break a weekly budget. Farm and mountain wives carried remedy knowledge for generations. She paid the doctor only when she had to. She always knew when. Number 4, the pin money, the allowance she refused to spend on herself. He gave her a small sum for her own little wants, such as stockings, a magazine, or a soda downtown. Pin money, they called it. Hers to enjoy. She enjoyed almost none of it. Most weeks the pin money went straight into the can, untouched, while she made the old stockings last and skipped the soda. He believed she was spoiling herself a little, and was glad of it. She was doing the opposite. The money meant for her smallest pleasures became the family's deepest reserve. The term dated to a time when a husband's allowance covered a wife's small wants. In 1955, it ran about $2 a week. She banked nearly all of it. He gave it to her to spend. She kept it to save them. Number 3, the first cut. Number 3, the first cut. The money divided before he ever saw it. On the weeks he let her cash the paycheck, she did the dividing before she walked in the door. Rent, utilities, groceries, and the can each took its share at the bank window, in cash, before a single dollar reached the kitchen table. By the time he counted what was there, the saving had already happened, invisibly, off the top. He thought he was looking at the whole paycheck. He was looking at what was left after the most important payment of the week. The habit ran through immigrant and working-class neighborhoods nationwide. The teller saw the saving the husband never did. The money was spoken for before he could speak for it. Number 2, the quiet gap. Spending less than he believed she spent. She let him think the household cost more than it did. Not by lying. She simply never corrected the generous figure in his head. He assumed the family lived close to the edge of his paycheck. In truth, she ran it well below the edge. The gap between what he imagined and what she actually spent was the family's slow fortune. Year after year, that gap bought a paid-off house and a calm she never bragged about. Across a decade, holding back even $10 a week built $1,000 a year of invisible margin. It bought the house outright. He thought they spent everything. The difference built everything. Number 1, pay herself first. Pay herself first. The simplest secret on this list, and the one she guarded most. Before the grocery money was touched, before a single bill was paid, the first thing she did with the household allowance was set a small amount aside, $1, sometimes 50 cents. It went into the can before anything else had a claim on it. Not what was left at the end. There was never anything left at the end. It came first, or it never came at all. She never explained it to him. There was nothing to explain. The amount was almost nothing. The order was everything. The magazines and bank pamphlets of the era preached this rule. The women who lived by it had learned it in the Depression. Not what you earn, what you keep before the world can reach it. None of these secrets required a degree, an advisor, or $1 these women did not already hold in their hands. They required attention. They required a woman willing to look at a household's real numbers without flinching. The husbands in these stories were not villains. Most were good men doing hard work for wages that never quite stretched. But the paycheck was only half the system. The other half lived in a coffee can, a sewn hem, a bank book kept in a drawer she did not mention. We remember the men of the 1950s as the providers. We built monuments to the breadwinner and forgot the woman who made the bread last. She balanced a budget she did not legally own. She built a savings she was not allowed to borrow against. She kept her family one quiet step ahead of disaster, and she let her husband believe it was luck. It was never luck. It was 1,000 small decisions made in a kitchen where no one was watching. These were not a wife's secrets. They were a family's foundation. And we have spent 70 years forgetting who poured it.